If only I'd known. The Narcissist Victim's Lament. There are many things that I hear or read in relation to those that seek my advice, my expertise. And one commonly is, if only I'd known your work 5 years ago, HG. If only I had this information 10 years ago. It's a common lament of individuals who are victims of a narcissist to talk about if only they'd known at the outset what they knew now. How the provision of that information would have enabled them to recognize what they were dealing with, to see the problems in a much sharper focus and allow them, potentially, to avoid years of abuse, misery, and torture. It is a common mantra that is issued by those who've been on the receiving end of the manipulations of a narcissist. And I'm going to provide you with an example of that particular lament and where that lament ends up, in order to understand more about the dynamic between narcissist and victim and the mentality of the narcissist's victim. Adam, name has been changed, first walked into my workplace in 2016, the victim writes. All intense macho energy and charm. In reality, he was a master manipulator who wormed his way into my life before systematically destroying it. If only I had known then to keep him at bay. It was 2016 and I was a separated mum in my mid-40s with a successful career in skills training. Adam brought clients into the office. Over coffee with his big, brown, puppy dog eyes, he told me his brother had been killed, pity play, triangulation, but was uncomfortable saying how. I really felt for him. He seemed to need a friend, empathic trait of caring, desire to heal and fix. I was not looking for a partner. I'd recently come out of my long-term relationship, but for 3 months, Adam lavished me with attention, love bombing. It was a huge ego boost, I suppose. After 4 months, lack of boundary recognition as a consequence of workplace relationship, we were in a relationship, and he'd encouraged me to go into business with him, assertion of control, the ties that bind. He met my 3 children, early introduction to children, then aged 11, 13 and 15, and was at my house 5 times a night. Lack of boundary recognition, monopolization of time. He called it a whirlwind romance. In reality, this was his love bombing and information gathering phase, where he was finding out everything about me in order to make us feel closer. He would sweep me out to the fanciest restaurants, flattery, and talk about his interests, cooking, the gym, and cycling like me, mirroring. And he was everything my ex hadn't been. We were in love, but there were red flags. He didn't like me socializing, threat to control, or having a male osteopath, threat to control, but he just wanted to protect me, he said. Send me pictures when you're out. I like seeing where you are. Assertion of control. Accusations of cheating, false accusations, soon followed, however much I swore faithfulness. I loved hiking, and when I drove to the mountains with a friend, where there was limited phone reception, he went mad. Threat to control, ignited heated fury. I'm going to fix your phone to make sure you're always safe, he texted. I reasoned he was anxious after his brother's death. Notice that once again, the victim of a narcissist, rather than seeing the behaviours for what they are, thinks that it's linked to something else which it isn't. A common response. However, this was when he started tracking me. As well as surreptitiously taking my picture, I recall him perched on the bath chatting, phone in hand, as I came out of the shower. I heard the click of a photo being taken, but when I asked him, he laughed. You're paranoid. False accusation, blame shifting. It would be 2 years later, when Adam was terrorizing me, malign Hoovers, when I awoke one morning to find 40 Facebook friends requests from men in Pakistan. I couldn't bear to even look at what had been sent and deleted the account. I dread to think what else he took, without me knowing. Lack of boundary recognition, devaluing behaviours. By 8 months, we thought constantly. Sustained devaluation, though never physically. Because he never laid a finger on me, I think it took me longer to recognise his behaviour as an abuser. Victims had bruises and cut lips, right? The only time he hit me, devaluation, was during sex. Never anywhere that would leave marks. I did not give him permission for that. I didn't like it rough. But who knows what's normal in other people's bedrooms? Was I just uptight? The self-doubt of the victim. His other partners, he said, had been accommodating. Triangulation. Sexual coercion is so rarely discussed. I was so confused but also deeply ashamed. Adam wanted sex daily, assertion of control, hypersexualization, somatic narcissist. And if I wasn't in the mood, he'd accuse me of sleeping around. Failure to have sex equals threat to control, therefore he has to nullify the threat to control with a false accusation. It became easier just to go with it, or he'd mock me, belittlement, and keep me awake all night, sleep deprivation. The next morning I would plaster on a smile, get the children ready and go to work. Slowly, I became isolated. Isolation, method of control. He wanted my undivided attention, fuel, control, so didn't like me seeing my personal trainer or friends. I didn't want work people to know about us, so we kept the relationship secret. While my friends said something was wrong, I felt too embarrassed to confide in them. Over the next year I tried several times to end it, but it was complicated by our shared business. Then he would claim undying love, preventative Hoover, and we would end up back together. It was a confidence-destroying cycle as he criticised my looks, invalidation, belittlement, my cooking, my parenting, my work, everything. My weight wildly fluctuated because he'd forced me to eat, saying I was too thin, use of food to control, but the next week I was too fat. It wasn't just food. He had a very particular hygiene and grooming routine. I had to shower twice a day, assertion of control, sometimes more. Adam dictated my makeup and hated me tanning, preferring pale skin. Looking at old photos of myself, I see a healthy woman in 2016, but by 2018, I was drawn, hunched with blank eyes, effect of the abuse. My hair fell out and I lost 2 teeth because of recurring infections, which my dentist said were stress-related. One time I was working overseas and he video called to see my hotel room. Assertion of control. He then exploded, "You're wearing all black, I've told you not to." His eyes turned black when angry. Even from abroad he controlled me. I questioned every tiny decision, fearing his reaction. Later, in therapy, I learned there was a name for his behaviour, coercive control, in which it's common to believe the abuser is right and blame yourself. I was also educated about narcissistic personality disorder, essentially a mental health condition in which people have an unreasonably high sense of their own importance. But back then, I thought he was just hot-headed, overprotective. Notice that when even told what she's dealing with, her emotional thinking would not allow her to absorb it. There was endless gaslighting, too. I was in the kitchen roasting lamb when he came in and angrily cried, "You've got that oven up too high, you're ruining dinner." He'd never used my oven, while I'd been making roast for years, so I ignored him. 20 minutes later he reappeared. "What are you playing at? You've got the oven too low." I hadn't changed a thing. The penny dropped. How many times had I reacted to his insane demands in a desperate bid to placate him? I started paying more attention after that. The final time I plucked up the courage to end it, almost 2 years after we had met, was when the stalking began. He refused to accept we were over, threat to control, so stood outside my house for hours, sense of entitlement, hoovering, ringing the doorbell, and controlling my home speakers from his mobile. I tried to get my ex to take the kids, but they were mostly with me, so all of this impacted them too. He caused a scene at work in front of customers. I could only get him to leave by promising to unblock him on my phone. Later that night I was so scared I drove around for 5 hours, returning to an email saying he'd overdosed, but had his stomach pumped. Suicide threat. I was beside myself. As much as I was scared, I didn't want him dead. I later discovered it was a lie. Stupidly, I took him back and was made to feel guilty, use of guilt, for his sore throat because of the stomach pump. It was the most frightening and miserable time of my life. I knew I needed an exit plan. I just didn't know what. I knew I had to get out of our business, and that's when the police got involved in August 2018. I resigned, had the paperwork delivered to him, and he went berserk. Threat to control, heated ignited fury. He lied to customers, smearing my name, smearing indirect assertion of control. So I told the police and hired a lawyer. I took public transport to her office because I was so scared and prayed he wouldn't kill me in public. I finally poured my heart out for the first time to that lawyer, who said this was domestic abuse. With her help, it cost me £9,000 to get a restraining order, which he broke multiple times over the next hellish 2 years. Threat to assertion of control. He would get arrested for breaching it, then he would be released on bail or wouldn't show up at court. It was torture, and I needed beta blockers to leave the house while the police inquiries went on. And while he was getting legal aid, I was losing thousands of pounds each time. Despite all the things he put me through, domestic and sexual abuse, harassment and theft, perjury, slander and libel, attempted extortion, vandalism, identity theft, fraud and psychological torture, it was a stalking charge that my lawyer would prosecute him for. I wanted to see him ripped to shreds in court, but when Adam finally appeared in the dock, he immediately pleaded guilty to stalking. I felt angry and let down by the criminal justice system. But as only 4% of stalking perpetrators are ever convicted, I am considered lucky. He was sentenced to 9 months in prison but was released after 100 days. Adam turned my life upside down, and in the short window he was inside, I had to make major life changes and start again from scratch. I changed my name, and I dare not even register to vote. Effectively, I've become a non-person. I swapped careers, lost thousands of pounds, moved cities and altered my appearance. I have not posted a selfie since 2018, so he doesn't know what I look like now. When I'm in certain places, I still wear a wig, hat or a mask and dress in tracksuits instead of my normal clothes. I still have post-traumatic stress disorder and probably always will. I am getting better. Therapy taught me coping strategies, though learning to relax when I still need my wits about me seems impossible. I'm no longer on medication. I worry constantly about my family's safety, every minute of every day. The thought of being with another man in the future is too overwhelming. I feel like I've been to hell and back. My focus now is repairing the relationships I have with my family, my friends, and crucially, myself. This individual, describing the all too familiar impact of an involvement with a narcissist, that not only did it impact upon her in the relationship, but had continuing repercussions and consequences thereafter. And, as she stated, if only she had known what she was dealing with beforehand. She also states in the article that domestic abuse lessons should be taught in schools. The impact upon her is considerable and continues to have ramifications even today. And thus, she issues that common narcissistic victim's lament, if only I'd have known. This is why my work is so important, to enable people to understand what they're dealing with and what that means and what they can do about it. And it is important for you to ensure that this work is shared as widely as possible, so that people come upon it before they become entangled, that they read red flag and black flag, that they become aware of the warning signs, so that they can take the steps to avoid what happened to the individual described in this video. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.